Welcome to the Three Ranger Bros audio library.
The home to audio dramas created by the Three Ranger Bros themselves.
Here they have built stories as a team, coming together with their storytelling ability and creating new tales and adventures for you guys to listen to.
These stories have been worked on by the Three Bros, and here we have a channel dedicated to them.
All the stories in this channel have been worked on by all three bros. Each story is crafted.
Then they make their own unique original characters, which they will do the voices of.
They explore many different fandoms and give unique takes and ideas within their favorite fictional worlds.
And best of all, they have created this channel to invite you, the listener, to join them in these fantastic tales. So strap in and dive into the Three Ranger Bros audio library.
Power Rangers Global Royal Blue Rebirth Chapter 3 Hidden Agendas.
Okay, so it seems like your arm was made with morphing grid energy, infused into allowing you to bond to those of mythology. Hence, why you were able to turn Fenrir into an auxiliary Zord. He bonded you to you, basically.
Himiko explained to Elias. Elias sat there with his new arm, made out of magical rock. He stared at it intensely. He flexed his fingers. The new ability he had. It aided the team and had opened new doors for him, filled with possibilities, filled with wonder. But this also concerned Elias. He knew the risks. He sat there with many thoughts swirling around his mind. At the same time, Eric, Mark and Lip had just ended their training session, with Eric tripping Mark over and slamming Lip onto the ground. The three had left the training area and walked out of the basement level, joining Himiko and Elias. They started mingling, chatting, getting some food when the alarm rang. They all rushed to the computer where Brohan sat. "We have another god turned into a monster. We must sort this out quickly," Brohan muttered as he sat there staring at the screen. Everyone ran off. Himiko leaned into Brohan.
Where is Heimdall?
Himiko asked. "He is talking to Thor and Zeus, trying to learn more about where they were kept," Brohan explained.
Okay, so we handled the new god monster. Heimdall isn't here, so you can rest. Brohan, you haven't slept in days.
Himiko demanded as she placed a nice, firm, gentle grasp on his shoulder. Then she ran off, chasing after the boys. In the City of Clouds, Nephis slammed her fist against one of the tables. Repeatedly, she let out a scream which could only mirror that of a teenage girl losing her mind. Thanatos sat there in his cage, his mind swirling. The thought of the underworld left unattended hurt his very soul. He sat there glaring at the Ranger Witch who kept them prisoner. Thor and Zeus did not return, and due to the tantrum the Ranger Witch was currently having, they must have been saved. He looked around at all the fellow gods and creatures, cages upon cages. He had to save them all. He had to do something. The underworld itself needed balance, and for that the world itself also needed to be in balance. Even though in his cage he couldn't access his godlike powers, he could still feel the underworld calling for him, pleading for the gods to return. Even death itself needed some form of balance. He sat there inside, when suddenly an idea struck it in his mind. A plan. It would require cunning execution. He knew the Nega Skull would turn him into a monster. Gods can't be killed, not in this universe. They just turn into energy, and that energy reforms after a period of time. So if Thor and Zeus and any other of the gods and creatures that thought the Rangers had been destroyed in their monster form, then that means they would have been turned back to their normal form at some point. Every now and then they could hear the howl of Fenrir, which only solidified this theory. Thanatos sat there, and he knew he needed a way out to execute his new plan.
"I can help you, Nephis,"
Thanatos grunted. Nephis stopped screaming and raging. She slowly turned to Thanatos slowly and strolled over to him. "What did you just say to me?" Nephis growled.
"Us, the gods of death. We need death. We mourn for it. Let me loose. Turn me into one of your warriors, and I'll deal with those pesky rangers. Let me show you my true power. I am the personification of death. How are your rangers gonna fight death itself?"
Thanatos asked. "You may have a point, actually," Nephis sighed. She strolled away and returned moments later with the Nega Skull. Okay, fine. Let's see how far you get, shall we? Nephis grinned. She aimed the Nega skull, and Thanatos was absorbed into it. His plan had started. He just silently hoped that the Rangers could defeat him, so he then could commit the next stage of his plan. The crystal eyes in the skull shone bright, then it spat up Thanatos back out, but as a monster. His monster form was all black and silver. His face looked like a skull, his wings now black, his body smooth. It looked like he was made out of black water. His sword now chipped and crooked. Go and cause chaos, my new creature, and get rid of those damn Rangers, will you? Nephis orders. The 5 members of the global team appeared in Athens, where the new monster stood, swinging his sword, sending waves of black energy across the town, destroying buildings. The people of Athens ran around, wild in fear.
Okay, any ideas on who or what this is?
Mark asked. Himiko quickly pulled out a book from her satchel and flipped through it. She skimmed through the gods of death and found the page on Thanatos, the personification of death in Greek mythology.
Bingo! I think it's this guy.
Himiko blurted and showed the boys the page that she found.
Okay, yeah, this is literally death. Never really mentioned. We don't have anything to go off here, so let's be careful.
Elias stated. Himiko slammed the book shut and shoved it back into her satchel. Mark stood forward as all 5 of them prepared their morphers.
It's morphin' time!
Mark called out. Mark held out his Cornish power morpher, and it popped open.
Kono bisficken!
Mark called out. Then the morpher dematerialized, leaving the coin floating there. Mark then morphed into his ranger suit. His helmet formed over his head. Then the coin started spinning and it flew at Mark, hitting Mark in the chest. The coin shattered, and Mark's Cornish chest shield formed around him. Mark had morphed into the red Cornish Ranger. Eric held out his fist. His green Celtic ring started to glow.
Now you're not, Kilchuck!
Eric called out. Then he held up his fist into the air, and suddenly a Celtic rune formed above him. He then lowered his arm, and the rune lowered itself down, and it phased over Eric, his ranger suit forming over him as the rune descended down. As the rune touched the ground, it vanished. Eric had morphed into the gold Celtic Ranger. Elias pulled off his necklace and crushed the crystal in his hand. The energy that came from the crystal formed into a sword sheathed in its shield. Elias grabbed the handle, which extended from the top of the shield, and pulled the sword out and held it up to the sky.
The Odenskraft Volden Veda.
Elias called out. Then the blue energy seeped out of its blade and it formed around him. Then the energy formed into his ranger suit. His horns grew from his helmet as he sheathed his sword. Elias had morphed into the blue Viking Ranger. Lip held out his arm. Ra appeared behind him and sunk his talons into his forearm. White veins rippled through his wrist, and a wristbound morpher appeared in the shape of a falcon head. Lip then held out his black crystal scarab. Its wings opened and the key extended. He then opened the falcon's mouth and placed the key inside, and then closed the mouth down. Capra! Lip called out. Then the falcon eyes started to glow, and the energy wave pulsed from his morpher, and it wrapped around Lip's entire body, forming into his ranger suit. Ra, the god of the sun, then merged into Lip's body, and his helmet formed around his head. Lip had morphed into the white Egyptian Ranger of Ra. Himiko grabbed the cherry blossom hairpin that kept her hair up, and she pulled it out, her hair draping over her shoulders.
Attention time. Neo no mayo no temi me.
Himiko called out. Then the tip of the pin started glowing. She dropped the pin and it sank into the ground through a veil of light. Then Himiko was encased in a giant flower bud. The pink flower started to glow, and it opened. The flower exploded in a flurry of petals. Himiko stood there in her ranger suit. She had morphed into the pink Japanese ranger. The 5 rangers ran into the scene. The monster form of Thanatos stood there as he saw the rangers and laughed.
I hope you prepared your funeral, rangers.
Thanatos growled. He swung his sword and unleashed another black energy wave. It had black wisps trailing off of it as the arcing wave flew at the 5 rangers. They all jumped over or slid under the arcing attack. The red Cornish ranger summoned his bow and aimed it true and straight and released an energy arrow. Thanatos twirled his sword and deflected the arrow with ease. The White Ranger Ra flew in. His feet hit the ground as he slid across. He swung his wing and slashed Thanatos. The monster retaliated with a swing of his sword and clashed with the White Ranger's wing. The impact forced the White Ranger to slid back. The Pink Japanese Ranger jumped in and swung her katana multiple times. Both the Pink Ranger and Thanatos entered a dance of clashing swords. Sparks erupted as their blades collided. The Pink Ranger jumped up and flipped over the monster. As she landed, she slashed the monster in the back. Thanatos stumbled forward, allowing the Gold Ranger to stab his javelin into the ground and use it to support himself as he threw out both his feet, double-kicking the monster. The Blue Viking Ranger slammed his shield into Thanatos and followed up with several sword slashes. Thanatos let out an almighty roar, unleashing a pulse of black energy, knocking back all the Rangers. Each one slowly climbed to their feet. Thanatos moved ever so swiftly. A single black feather fell from his wing. He grabbed it and slammed it into the Pink Ranger's chest. The black feather absorbed into the Ranger. She cried out in pain. She demorphed and dropped to the ground unconscious. Himiko's skin was now grey with black veins running through, each one thick, pulsing and wriggling like something was alive within her. Thanatos moved with ease and with speed unimaginable. Another feather fell from his wing and into his hand, and he dodged a sword swing from the Blue Viking Ranger and slammed the feather into him. The Viking Ranger dropped to his knees. He demorphed and Elias fell to the ground unconscious, his skin now matching Himiko's. The Gold Celtic Ranger threw his javelin at the god. The monster caught the golden javelin and the Gold Ranger teleported to it, standing on top of it, his feet gently planting on the golden pole. He swung a foot up and kicked the monster directly in the head. He landed on the ground and snatched his javelin back, and he spun and swung the javelin at the same time. Thanatos blocked the attack with his sword. He then punched the God Ranger in the chest and uppercutted him, knocking him off his feet. Thanatos pulled another feather from his wing and slammed it into the Gold Ranger. The Gold Ranger wriggled on the ground for a moment as he demorphed and Eric laid there unconscious, his skin now matching his fallen allies. The White Ranger Ra and the Red Cornish Ranger both dove in, trying to avoid physical contact with the monster-formed god. The White Ranger of Ra took flight once again and flew high into the sky. Thanatos flapped his wings and took flight as well, chasing after the White Ranger. The White Ranger floated high and rapidly flapped his wings, sending white feathers to rain down on the ascending god. They hit Thanatos, but the monster carried on flying through the attack, not phased. He grabbed the White Ranger by the foot and pulled him down, sliding his sword up at the same time, slashing the Ranger directly up the middle of his torso. He then grabbed the Ranger and headbutted him. He pulled another feather from one of his wings and then let it slowly be absorbed into the White Ranger's body. He then floated there stunned and demorphed, and Lip fell from a great height. He lost consciousness as his skin went grey and the black veins grew throughout. The Red Cornish Ranger saw Lip fall from the sky. He quickly started running. His power bow dematerialized and he summoned the power axe. He shifted into cannon mode. As he ran, he aimed it down at the ground and fired it, blasting the ground, which made him launch into the air. He grabbed onto the window ledge of a building a few stories up, and he shot the cannon again and launched higher up into the air once more. He caught Lip, snatching him from his descent. He landed on a nearby roof and rolled to secure himself as he dropped Lip on the ground. The Red Cornish Ranger stood there. He was a bit sore, but he was safe. He leaned over the roof ledge and saw his fallen teammates all on the ground as well, all unconscious. All their skin were grey, covered in thick black veins, and the Red Cornish Ranger turned around quick. As the large shadow cast over him, he saw Thanatos land on the rooftop with him, his wings folded in, his sword raised, pointing straight at the Red Ranger.
What have you done to them? What have you done to my team?
The Red Cornish Ranger roared. Flashbacks hit him hard. Images of his very first team, the Power Rangers Royal Britannia from Universe 20, killed by Nethys. The Red Ranger snapped out of his daze. He looked down, and in his hand was the Sword of Darkness. Once again, he donned the hatred and anger he had buried inside, and it was now solidified in the form of an evil sword. He looked directly at Thanatos. He then ran at the god, and he swung the sword with all his strength. Thanatos raised his sword to block it, but the Sword of Darkness cut through the blade with ease, shattering the metal into pieces. Thanatos stood there stunned. The Red Cornish Ranger struck the monster across the chest, then across the knees, forcing the monster to drop to the ground. The Red Cornish Ranger grabbed Thanatos by the back of the head and used the end of the handle of the sword and smashed into the monster's face repeatedly. He then kicked the monster in the chest, which threw the monster flying across the roof. The Red Ranger ran two fingers up the blade. The Sword of Darkness charged with a dark dark crimson energy. He then swung the sword down, unleashing a charged attack. The energy flew at Thanatos. He knelt there and used his wings to shield himself. The energy hit him hard, causing a massive explosion. Thanatos slowly stood. The monster gazed at the empty space where his wings should be. He looked down and the black feathers littered around his feet. His wings were no more. The attack had destroyed them. He let out a roar and teleported away, disappearing from sight. The red Cornish Ranger dropped to his knees. The sword of darkness dematerialized. He took several deep breaths in, calming himself down. His thoughts spiraling on what just happened, and how little control he had over his anger-fueled actions. Mark stood in the basement, his fallen teammates laid in their beds, the black veins slowly advancing up their bodies, their skin even more grey than before. His arms were crossed, his eyes darting between each one of his teammates. Brohan approached him slowly. "Mark, I believe I found out some information, and maybe a potential cure," Brohan told him. Mark swiveled on his heel, now facing his mentor. "This is something called Death's Touch. It is attacking them on a physical, mental, and spiritual level, all at the same time. It's 1,000 years of torture placed upon them within a short few hours. However, I believe there is a cure," Brohan stated.
Why do I feel like there's a but following that?
Mark asked. Brohan tilted his head, gesturing Mark to follow him. He led him upstairs to the computer room, where on the table stood the holographic communication connection to an old friend, Merlin from Universe 20, Mark's home universe. "Hello, Mark," Merlin said gently.
"Merlin! I'm glad to see you, old friend,"
Mark said with some relief. "I hear your team have been touched by death itself. Nasty business, that," Merlin sighed. "Merlin, please go ahead and explain to Mark about this cure that you were telling me about," Brohan asked. "Yes, back in my good old days, during the reign of King Arthur, I fell ill to the Mortius flower, mixed with magic. Arthur had to find a plant to retrieve its petals. Turning the petals into some form of liquid turns the poisonous plant into its own antidote. I believe if I was to infuse it with morphing grid energy, it would enhance its healing properties and relinquish the grid deaths on your friends," Merlin explained.
"And where do I find this plant?"
Mark asked Merlin. "Well, we do have some good news and bad news there. Good news is, I have some with me. Bad news is, I'm unsure on how we infuse it with morphing grid energy," Merlin replied. Mark scratched his head, and then suddenly, someone came to mind. One of the smartest people he knew throughout the multiverse.
"Merlin, I'm coming home briefly. I'm coming to get that plant off you. Brohan, I will return with the antidote,"
Mark blurted. In Universe 19, at Angel Groves, hidden away from sight, lied the command center. A portal opened and Mark walked out, the Mortius flower leaves in hand. Even though time was of the essence, his mind felt a bit more at ease after seeing his old friend in person, even if it was brief. Billy walked in, the Ultra Blue Ranger, his face buried in his holographic tablet. "Zordon, I'm picking up some wild energy spiking here. I think Mark might be back. I just gotta make sure," Billy called out without looking up from his screen.
"I could save you some time there,"
Mark announced. Billy looked up in shock. Mark gave him an awkward wave. Hey Mark, what's up?" Billy stumbled. The two rangers shook hands, and then Mark placed down the leaves and explained everything that just happened. "Sounds like hell, but yeah, of course, I can help you. Come on, this way," Billy nodded. After a couple of hours of testing, Billy used the energy transferring device to siphon some of his ultra grid energy into the boiling pot, which now contained the leaves. The energy stirred into a liquid, mixing with the leaves, created the antidote elixir. Billy poured it into a sealed vial and handed it to Mark. "This should be enough for all four of them. Maybe there should be a little extra," Billy said with a hopeful smile.
"Thanks, Billy. Means a lot that I can rely on you. Sorry I couldn't stay. Give Jason and the others my best, would you?"
Mark said. "Of course I will." Billy nodded, and then with that, Mark opened a portal, antidote in hand, and he jumped through, heading back to Universe 2118. Lip, Eric, Himiko, and Elias all sat there trying not to choke on the flavour of the antidote. "That is so wrong, man," Lip gasped.
"I would rather drink bleach than that again." Blech!
Eric moaned.
"Thank you, Mark. It tastes vile, but thanks,"
Himiko muttered.
"You guys are more than welcome. Now, back to our monster at hand. I managed to remove his wings, but he's still at large,"
Mark explained.
That power of his came from his feathers. If you removed his wings, then he can't access the power.
Elias nodded. The team all climbed out of their beds and straightened themselves up. When they were ready, Brohan burst in and noted that Thanatos was sighted calling for the Red Cornish Ranger. They all suited up and went off to fight Thanatos for the second time. Thanatos stood there in raw anger, his sword now encased in wisps of pure death, condensing into pure energy. The 5 global rangers appeared in line, ready for action.
So you managed to cure them. Won't matter.
Thanatos growled.
Without your wings, you don't stand a chance.
The Red Cornish Ranger sneered.
By the power of Poseidon, I call forth the deep blue prison!
The Blue Viking Ranger called out. He raised his sword into the air and a veil of water magically appeared and wrapped around Thanatos, trapping him in a ball of water. The Gold Celtic Ranger threw his javelin at Thanatos, but before the javelin could make contact, Thanatos dispersed a pole of dark energy. Breaking his water prison, he landed on the ground and caught the javelin. The Gold Ranger teleported. Thanatos swung his sword, assuming the Gold Ranger would mimic his previous attack from before, but the Gold Ranger appeared under the javelin this time, crouched down. He placed his hand on the ground and spun his feet up in the air, tripping the monster over. As the Gold Ranger jumped back, the Red, White, and Pink Rangers dove in. Thanatos stood, but barely had time to react as the Pink Ranger and the Red Ranger took turns slashing the monster with the Power Sword and the Cherry Blossom Katana. They both slashed the monster several times. They both leapt out of the way as the White Ranger Ra swooped in and grabbed Thanatos. He pulled the monster into the air and flew high into the sky. He then let go and slashed the monster several times with his claws, then booted the monster with all his strength and sent the monster back down to the ground. "Let's see how you like it!" The White Ranger Ra roared. Thanatos fell. His sword left his hand.
I have just one more thing in my arsenal,
he muttered. Then his body was wrapped in black energy, and the energy began to grow. He then became a gigantic monster and landed on his feet.
We need Megazord power, now! Global Zords, arise!
The Red Cornish Ranger called out. The Knight Zord arrived on its Horse Zord. The Warrior Zord, Samurai Zord, Pharaoh Zord, and Viking Zord all appeared next to it. The Viking Zord and the Horse Zord combined into form the torso of the Megazord. The Warrior Zord and Knight Zord became the legs, and the Samurai Zord and the Pharaoh Zord became the arms to the Megazord. The Rangers appeared in the cockpit.
Global Megazord, Viking formation!
The Red Cornish Ranger announced. The Megazord stood with its sword and shield in hand. Thanatos advanced and swung its gigantic sword, which collided with the Megazord's shield. Thanatos jumped back and aimed his sword, releasing a devastating beam. The black blast hit the shield, pushing the Megazord back.
Elias, it's time for our new friend to make an appearance.
The Red Cornish Ranger grunted.
On it!
The Blue Viking Ranger replied. He held out his hands together and the grey Zord gem appeared, floating between his palms. He grabbed it and held it up into the air.
I call forth the Fenrir Zord!
The Blue Viking Ranger called out. Fenrir came bounding in. The gem left the Megazord and connected with Fenrir. There was a surge of energy and the mythological beast became the Fenrir Zord. The Pharaoh Zord detached from the Megazord and Fenrir Zord's legs folded in on itself as the tail detached and the Fenrir Zord attached itself to the Megazord, becoming its new arm.
Global Megazord, Blue Viking Fang formation!
The Red Cornish Ranger called out. Thanatos aimed his sword once again, but before he could strike, the Megazord advanced. It used his shield to knock the sword away, but before punching it with Fenrir's fist. Then the Megazord aimed its Fenrir arm out and the mouth opened.
Piercing Howl Final Strike!
The Blue Viking Ranger called out. The Fenrir Zord unleashed its howling cannon. As the sky was pierced with an intense howl, the beam left the Zord and struck the monster. The monster fell back and exploded. From the explosion, the true form of Thanatos formed, now free of the Negaskull's control and Nephthys' prison. The Rangers returned to the ground and demorphed.
Thank you, Rangers,
Thanatos said with a bow.
Please, it's our pleasure. Must admit, though, you put up one hell of a fight.
Mark replied with a small smirk.
Let us call Heimdall. He's a place for the god whilst this war goes on. A safe space.
Elias stated.
I must decline. I will admit I purposely provoked my capture to turn me into one of her monsters, in hopes that you would defeat me, freeing me from that prison that held me for all those years. The underworld is not in balance. I must go home, and I hope I can, for now, give balance until the other gods of death have come home.
Thanatos admitted. The entire team looked at each other, slightly confused. We are glad we could help, Lip said awkwardly.
Please be warned, Rangers. I will return. I wish to aid you. If aiding you beats Loki and his witch of a general, then of course that means it aids the underworld, and it will put it back in balance. Then I will aid you where I can. Heed my words. I will return with help.
Thanatos told them.
Thanks, we think.
Eric muttered. Thanatos faded away as he teleported to the underworld, leaving the Rangers' team to deal with the aftermath of the battle. They strode through Athens calmly.
Hey, Mark, you never said how you managed to destroy his wings.
Himiko asked as she nudged him playfully.
Oh, I used the power cannon. It was a well-timed shot, I guess.
Mark lied. He was not ready to admit that he fell into the grasp of his anger and used the Sword of Darkness.
What do you think Thanatos meant by he will bring help?
Elias asked, confused.
Maybe he has new Zords or weapons for us.
Eric theorized. The Rangers strolled through Athens victorious, happy with their victory, feeling even closer due to their near-death experience, and all of them confused by what Thanatos meant with his parting words. Thanatos strolled through the underworld. He was not the ruler that fell on the shoulders of Hades. He ruled their section of the underworld, but Thanatos was the personification of death. This was just as much his home as it was Hades. He strolled up to a massive rock structure that acted as a block for prison cells. He strolled to the ground level and approached a specific cell. He waved his hand and the gate unlocked. It took some time, but eventually someone walked out. A human, battered and beaten. He walked incredibly slow, like he had no energy. He only wore tattered rags. His eyes were now being stung by the light from the red skies, reminding him of the dark hole of his prison cell.
Hello, Minato. It is time for your sentence to be reduced. I need your help. How'd you like to become a Power Ranger?
Thanatos told his prisoner.